issued a yellow thunderstorm warning. We're concerned about downpours over parts of northeast England and southeast Scotland. Hit and miss, but some torrential rain is possible. Large hailstones could also be an issue. Elsewhere, well, 1 or 2 showers, but plenty of sunny spells across much of Scotland. Some brighter weather across the east. We'll see temperatures again into the mid-20s, but elsewhere temperatures a little lower than of late and turning fresher as this band of rain moves in through the evening. So most places seeing some rain during the overnight period. That band of rain swinging its way northwards. That is that cold front, and so temperatures won't be as high overnight. It will still be quite warm and humid this evening, so still quite uncomfortable for sleeping, but by morning temperatures will be that much lower and certainly a fresher feel on Saturday. Still sunny spells for many eastern areas on Saturday. Sunshine for most of the day across northeast Scotland, eastern parts of England, but further west, after a largely sunny start, the showers will get going. The showers will tend to zip through because it's also going to be quite blustery, unseasonably gusty winds around western coast in particular. That'll make it feel even cooler with temperatures in the mid-teens at best in some places. Still quite warm across eastern parts where we'll see the longest spells of sunshine. A few more of those showers drifting north across Scotland during Saturday evening. A bit more wet weather working into Northern Ireland at the same time. A big swirl of low pressure which will continue to throw showers across the country on Sunday, mostly in the west where it'll be windy, generally dry and sunny in the east.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome to Friday's edition of On the Money, where we're focused on the UK's cost of living crisis, helping you beat the squeeze. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour, we're talking about the economic backdrop to that double Tory by-election defeat, while examining new figures out today on retail sales, manufacturing and consumer confidence. Plus, we're reporting from Heathrow, where BA ground staff have voted to go on strike later this summer. And what of that government decision earlier this week to restore the triple lock on state pensions, a move almost lost amidst the tsunami of other news? All that and more on The Money after the GB News headlines with Rhiannon Jones.
Thank you, Liam. It's 1 minute past 1, your top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says he will keep going despite suffering a leadership blow in 2 by-election defeats, a warning the following footage contains flashing images. In the Devon seat of Tiverton and Honiton, the Liberal Democrats overturned a 24,000 Tory majority, while in West Yorkshire, Labour reclaimed the Red Wall seat of Wakefield. The Prime Minister, who's in Rwanda for the Commonwealth Summit, suggested the results are due to the cost of living crisis.
Absolutely true that we've had some tough by-election results, and they've been, I think, a reflection of a lot of things, but we've got to recognise that voters are going through a tough time at the moment, and I think that as a government I've got to listen to what people are saying, and in particular to the difficulties people are facing over the cost of living, which is, I think, for most people the number one issue.
Well, after his party's by-election victory, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, meanwhile, has called Wakefield the birthplace of the next Labour government.
The Tory party is absolutely imploding. They know they're out of ideas and they're out of touch. And if they had any decency, they'd get out of the way for the next Labour government, because what happened here in Wakefield was people exercising their judgment on this Conservative government and voting no confidence.
Meanwhile, Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey's been visiting Tiverton to celebrate his party's by-election victory. He said it's time to show Boris Johnson the door.
Today, the Liberal Democrats have shown that the rule of Boris Johnson and this uncaring Conservative government can be ended. But today is just a start. So join us and let's get rid of them.
Well, first thing this morning, Tory party chairman Oliver Dowden handed in his resignation following the double defeat. In an open letter to the Prime Minister, he wrote that somebody needed to take responsibility for the results. Mr Johnson said he understands Mr Dowden's disappointment with the by-election, but said he's sad to see him go. Meanwhile, in Rwanda, Boris Johnson has met with the Prince of Wales at the Commonwealth Summit in Kigali. It's not yet known what was discussed, but it follows comments made in private by Prince Charles, reportedly calling the government's policy of sending asylum seekers to the country as appalling. Speaking at the summit's opening ceremony earlier, he told Commonwealth leaders they have the freedom to choose whether or not they become a republic.
The benefit of long life brings me the experience that arrangements such as these can change calmly and without rancour. We should never forget the things which do not change. The close and trusted partnership between Commonwealth members, our common values and shared goals, and perhaps most importantly, the strong and enduring connections between the peoples of the Commonwealth, which strengthen us all.
Child killer James Watson has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 15 years for the murder of 6-year-old Ricky Neve in 1994. The 41-year-old was 13 when he lured the schoolboy to woods near his home in Peterborough and strangled him. Watson was identified by DNA on the victim's clothes following a re-examination of the case 2 decades later. Members of the RMT working on the London Underground have voted to continue industrial action as the dispute over jobs, pay and conditions continues. 91% voted to withdraw their labour in the coming weeks and months, although no dates have yet been decided. Train services have been disrupted this week due to RMT walkouts, with a third day of strikes planned for tomorrow. More unions say they'll ballot staff next week, making further strikes likely in the summer. Reality TV star Katie Price has avoided jail after breaching a restraining order against her ex-husband's new partner. Price admitted sending abusive messages to Kieran Hayler about his fiancée Michelle Pentecost in January. The former glamour model's been sentenced to an 18-month community order and will have to pay £1,500 in court costs. And in the US, the Senate has passed a landmark bill to increase gun safety, the first significant firearms legislation to be agreed in 3 decades. The bill tightens background checks for people with domestic violence and juvenile convictions. It comes after a number of recent mass shootings, including one at a school in Uvalde in Texas, where 19 children were killed. President Joe Biden has welcomed the vote. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, let's go back to Liam with On the Money.
And coming up on the money today, the Tories have taken a double by-election hammering. But to what extent was that due to the economy? As the Conservatives try to explain the loss of Wakefield in Yorkshire and Tiverton and Honiton in Devon, new figures show further slips in retail sales, in manufacturing and in consumer confidence. But how is the UK economy doing compared to the rest of Europe and the Western world? Is the economic doom and gloom being overdone? We hold a detailed discussion. Also, the triple lock on the basic state pension is to be restored, suggesting the elderly could get a bumper 10% rise in the basic state pension next year. Is this the right policy? Or should more help be given instead to younger generations, not least families trying to buy a house or struggling to make ends meet? Plus, more holiday chaos on the horizon as British Airways ground staff vote to strike at Heathrow later this summer. Even if you're lucky enough to be able to afford a foreign holiday, is it worth the aggro? And as ever, I want your questions, opinions, ideas. What do you think of the issues raised in today's On the Money? Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet @gbnews. And don't forget to subscribe to our GB News YouTube channel. I'll read out some of your messages later in the show, so stay with us because this is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and you're On the Money. Our supporters are distressed and disappointed by recent events, wrote Oliver Dowden, erstwhile Tory party chairman, in his resignation letter sent to the Prime Minister this morning. And for many Conservatives, last night's by-election results were distressing indeed. But while the outgoing Tory chair wrote of a run of very poor results for our party, what's also true is that the UK economy is also suffering from a run of poor results. And whatever voters may or may not think of the Prime Minister, Partygate and all the rest of it, this cost of living crisis will also have surely played a part in this double by-election blow for the Tories. Just this morning, new figures showed that retail sales actually fell in May as households cut back on food shopping. Overall retail sales fell by 0.5% in May, with sales of food down 1.6% as cash-strapped households struggled with rising cost of living. These falling retail sales numbers reflect a decline in broader consumer confidence. New figures show that this highly respected GfK Consumer Confidence Index fell in June to its lowest level since 1974. And separate data points to a near stagnation in orders received by UK manufacturing firms, with the PMI New Orders Index falling to 50.8, with scores below 50 signalling contraction. That's the lowest new orders number since March 2021 for manufacturing during the depths of lockdown. These are tough economic times, and that clearly has implications for whichever party's in government. But is the UK really doing so much worse than the rest of Europe and the Western world, as many of Boris Johnson's political enemies claim? For what the numbers actually show is that since voting to leave the European Union in 2016, the UK has actually grown more than much of Western Europe. And our 9.1% inflation rate, while alarming, is actually close to the Western average. So that's our somewhat controversial, somewhat political, on the money question today. After this Conservative Party pummelling, is the economic doom and gloom being overdone? Grown-up conversations with people who know their stuff. That's what we do here on The Money, today and every day. Q, Tash Courtney-Smith, retailer marketing expert and CEO of Bolt Digital. Tash, returning to the show. Great to have you with us. And a On The Money regular, Vicky Price. She is, of course, Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economic and Business Research. Vicky, always good to see you. Tash, let's talk to you first. I know you want to talk about Primark in particular, and we'll come to that, but what do you make of these retail numbers? We saw a rare drop in retail sales in May, and we saw an even sharper drop in food sales as the cost of living squeeze really starts to take its toll.
Yeah, I mean, I like your question there. Is economic doom and gloom being overdone? And I think the issue is we all live in quite short-term time cycles where we hear a lot of bad news, and all of us right now as consumers are hearing a lot of bad news. The only real way we're seeing that hit currently in our pockets is through things like petrol prices and gas and electricity bills. However, those are very core fundamental things, and people have an immediate instinctive reaction of tightening their belt to those external pressures. So I think it's quite early to be able to answer the question about whether or not economic doom and gloom is being overdone, but there's definitely, because we definitely are seeing nationwide people reacting and feeling very tense, tighten their belt. The cost of living crisis is all we hear about, it's all we talk about. How that plays out over the longer term, I think we just don't know. But what we are facing is an onslaught of bad news, which means that people are just going to continue to tighten their belts. At that point, you have to ask whether this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy or whether it is an actual genuine shift.
Vicky, what do you think? A load of data came out this morning. I've deliberately featured it on The Money because I know everywhere else will just be focused on the political fallout from the by-election results and will Boris Johnson leave or stay and Oliver Dowden's letter and so on. I know you will have looked at the data closely this morning as I did. What did you think?
Well, they were quite disappointing. But the interesting thing about the retail data is that we had seen a bit of a pickup happening in the previous month, and then all that was reversed.
And more.
The latest, yes, which is a bit of a worry. But there are some interesting things within it, nevertheless, so we shouldn't get too depressed about it. Because, yes, food sales have gone down, but spending in other areas of services that people really value, including, of course, as we've seen recently, the huge demand for tourism and leisure, which has picked up again. So there seems to have been a bit of a switch. Now, how long that can last, it's a big issue, because obviously as the cost of living hits even further, people will cut back on those as well. But for the moment, there seems to have been some shift. So I'm just wondering how people are doing on the food side. Is it, the prices, of course, have been going up, but is it that they're just substituting eating at home as they used to doing something different? And there are already concerns that perhaps in some sectors of the food industry, there may have been some over-ordering in some areas.
Yeah.
And what are they going to do with this at the end of the day?
Yeah, because perishable of a lot of this stuff.
Maybe food banks will benefit from this. But the consumer, yes, of course, confidence has gone down very significantly. We were not very surprised about that. And of course, it has to have had some impact also on the election results that we have seen.
Indeed.
And with that confidence actually dropping to the lowest on record, basically, because you mentioned 74, but I don't think we were quite measuring confidence.
That's right.
The same
the
way
first
before.
time since that series began. It's a very long-standing series, isn't it? The GFK
Absolutely. And you
Consumer Confidence Series.
Indeed, and you mentioned, of course, there are other series as well that are looking at all this. You mentioned Europe and how they're doing. Confidence is dropping there very significantly too. So we're in the same boat.
I'm going to come back to you on Europe because amidst all the other news that's going on, some people are trying to have a debate, 6 years on from when we voted, 23rd of June this week. A lot of people are talking about how British economy has been doing since that European Union referendum. But we will come back to that. Because Tash Courtney-Smith, I want to ask you, you are very much a retail and a digital retail specialist. That's what Bolt does. You wanted to talk to me about Primark, one of the biggest names on the high street to have held out against going online. Now that's changing.
It is. So Primark have just announced their foray into online shopping through opening click and collect in a test pilot of stores. Now, Primark is one of our most successful huge retailers in the UK. They have always resisted online. It's not always been entirely sure why they have. I think what was really interesting about this is they said they believe there may be something like untapped potential in in the people visiting their website and their customers to shop online. And I think that is a statement of the absolute obvious in terms of course, the Primark consumer would like the option of buying online and buying in store. So I imagine this test, of which Primark is quite late to the game compared to other retailers, is going to actually prove to be a resounding success and will quickly be rolled out past click and collect into actual delivery. It will certainly be interesting to see where that goes. I mean, it's not easy running an e-commerce business. They are different to bricks and mortar businesses. That might be one of the reasons that Primark has resisted for so long. But I would imagine they're going to see an absolute influx of orders and demand through an online store.
And briefly, Tash, I mean, many of our viewers will live in towns rather than cities. Many towns across the UK, the high streets are suffering. They're being hollowed out. Is a huge high street name like Primark finally going online? Do you see that as another blow for the high street? Or do you think the likes of Primark and many other of our big names are always going to have, a dual approach, both online and with bricks and mortar stores?
I mean, that dual approach, that omni-channel approach is absolutely key to a retailer's success. I think what harms the high street is when retailers exit or move to different types of structures, such as out-of-town parks. I think adding to a shopper's choice and ability to choose how they shop, whether they go online or whether they visit the store, is not damaging to the high street. And I think from a business point of view for Primark, it's absolutely the right thing to do, just to have another revenue stream and to give their consumers more options as in how to buy. So I don't see this per se as being damaging to the high street. I actually wonder why it's taken Primark so long to get to the point to launch this type of facility.
Very interesting, and we'll monitor how Primark are doing, because it is a big move, and I'm glad that we've been able to mark it in our discussion today. Vicky, going back to you, do you think we're guilty, people like you and I, economists, people who pontificate in the media, have we overdone the doom and gloom in recent months? Do you think there may be some people out there who want to, not talking about you or me or anyone in particular, but do you think there's a tendency out there to overdo the doom and gloom as a way of hitting the Tories, as a way of getting back at Boris Johnson?
There will be some people who do that, but in reality, we have quite a lot of the facts out there which show that the economy is slowing down. There might be the odd quarter when we do reasonably well. I mean,
we're not doing too badly compared to the French and the Germans. Obviously, the Americans are growing faster. They've a very big, powerful economy. They are self-sufficient on oil and gas. Obviously, they're huge oil and gas producers.
But there are quite a lot of indications that in some of the countries in Europe, they'll do reasonably well in the summer because of tourism. So if you look at the southern European countries,
of course, yeah,
it's not going to be quite the same for places like Germany, which is, of course, now really worrying about gas supplies from Russia. And that's going to be a big issue for them. So prices are going up and they're really worried about what the implication of the economy would be. So you might find that there is a huge differential. Here, the forecasts are that this quarter is probably going to see a decline in GDP, the one we're in now.
Yeah.
But again,
we've already had 2 successive months of decline, haven't we? So a quarter's 3 months. So.
Indeed, but we need 2 quarters, of course, of decline to have a recession.
Yeah.
Now, we might see things stabilise a little bit in the summer because basically, in holidays, people spend a lot on tourism. There will still be some staycations and people will be going out during the holidays and spending quite a lot of money on retail and entertainment. So there's going to be a bit of a recovery possibly. Now, the question is what happens in the final quarter of the year when those electricity bills go up again.
Tash Courtney-Smith, final word to you. To what extent do you think we're going to enter recession? Vicky Price has just said there we're probably going to have 1 quarter of negative growth, but probably not 2 quarters. And that, of course, is the technical definition of a recession. What's your view of the summer, given that you're such a retail, customer-facing person?
I think it's interesting. You said to people like us who pontificate about this sort of thing, are we driving that? I think the bottom line is that is being driven. Consumers are tightening their belts because of reasons ranging from discussions in the media to the actual facts of what's happening to prices. So I think what we're expecting to see is consumers being a lot more choosy about what they spend their money on, which just means that from a retail point of view, brands are going to have to work harder and harder. I think there will be a fallout. I think we can expect some closures of brands, more closures of shops, some fallout from some of the digital first brands. We currently live in a world where we have a huge number of new brands that have been created over the past sort of 5 to 10 years. Not everyone's going to survive, but that is a natural economic cycle, and these times come. So really it's a question of, from a retail point of view, the brands that are the strongest, the cream rises to the top, the brands that are the strongest will survive, and there's going to be a bit of a shakeout, because the bottom line is, whether it's technically a recession or not, consumers are feeling pain, they're feeling jittery, they're hearing lots of bad stories, and they're questioning what they're going to spend their money on. And I don't think that is something that's going to be halted or stopped.
Tash Courtney-Smith, CEO of Bolt Digital, we're grateful for your time here on The Money today. And Vicky Price is staying with us for the rest of the show. This is On The Money with me, Liam Halligan. It's 1:20. And after the break, we'll be speaking with Age UK after the government decides to restore that triple lock on state pensions. Is that the right thing to do? What do the younger generation think? Stay with us. You're On The Money.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
with honest and civilised conversation. We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back. You're on the money here on GB News TV, DAB+, digital radio and online. Now, this week, UK inflation hit 9.1%, a fresh 40-year high as food and fuel costs kept rising. All of us are feeling these price pressures, not least pensioners. Many elderly people have indeed had to tighten their belts after the triple lock, which ensures annual pension rises are kept in line with inflation. Average wages, or 2.5%, whichever is higher, was temporarily suspended. But this week, Chancellor Rishi Sunak announced the triple lock will be restored next year, which could see the basic state pension rising by inflation a bumper 10%. Well, here to talk about this is Christopher Brooks. He's head of policy at the charity Age Concern. And Vicky Price is still with us, chief economic advisor at the Centre for Economic and Business Research. Chris, what do you think of this restoration of the triple lock? I guess the champagne corks were popping.
Well, I can assure you we don't drink much champagne at Age UK. But yeah, it's very welcome for the Chancellor to announce that he's committed to restoring the triple lock. It makes an absolutely huge difference to a lot of pensioners. The majority of pensioners in the country rely on the state pension for most of their income. So it's really welcome for a lot of people who have been really struggling. And obviously, as we've heard, it only went up by 3.1% this year. So it was well below the current inflation figures, which left a lot of people with a huge gap and a really significant shortfall to make up in their budgeting. So to restore the triple lock, I think, is very much needed and is indeed very welcome. And we hope the government does stick to this.
Chris, what would you say to the argument that, yes, of course, there is pensioner poverty in the UK and many pensioners, as you've said, rely heavily on that basic state pension. But quite a lot of pensioners, there's no easy way to say this, will use the basic state pension to buy, more wine for their cellars or maybe a few repairs on their holiday home. I guess what I'm saying is that this is a universal benefit, of course. It's across all pensioners, a sacred principle of our welfare state. But given that times are tough and cash is strapped, wouldn't it be better to target specific policies, specific benefits on pensioners that need it most, rather than an across-the-board rise when so many other parts of society, not least young families with kids, there's a lot of suffering there too?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of suffering from all walks of life. And it's not Age UK's role to advocate for other groups, so we're just here to represent the interests of older people. But the universal benefits are really important. It's really the only way you can make sure that you reach everybody. So there are obviously means-tested benefits that pensioners can claim, mainly pension credit, which is very valuable to a lot of people and passports people through to other benefits as well. But a lot of people don't claim it. About a third of eligible pensioners fail to claim pension credit, which is a real shame. And I would encourage any of your viewers who even have a vague sniff that they might be eligible for pension credit to make a claim, because you never know, it could be really helpful. But pension credit, because it's unclaimed by so many people, there are a lot of pensioners, often people on the very lowest incomes, who rely or completely reliant on the state pension itself. And so increasing it is absolutely imperative. It's the only way you can really be sure that you're reaching the very hardest to reach. And I think if you try to means test it further, it would really backfire. And yes, okay, there are some wealthy pensioners. That's fair enough. It's a well-known fact. But most people really aren't wealthy. They live sort of on the breadline or even below the breadline. About 1 in 6 pensioners still live in poverty. Many of those don't claim pension credit. So it is really important to maintain this balance between universal benefits as well as the means-tested benefits that people can claim on top and can help people build up a better standard of living.
Vicky, it's an age-old debate, isn't it? Universal benefits as opposed to targeted benefits, which, as Chris Brooks of Age UK rightly says, sometimes the most vulnerable, they don't claim their targeted benefits. They just suffer in silence. They're hard to reach, particularly if they're living alone. If you were still running the government's economic service, what would you say to ministers about this restoration of the triple lock, which will see people with basic state pensions, some of them wealthy, getting a 10% increase in the basic state pension?
Well, I would say that what we don't want to see is a reversal of the trend that we had seen for some time before the COVID crisis hit, which was at least pensioners were improving their standard of living. We used to have quite a lot of pensioners who are very poor, just as has been expressed. What we don't want is that to be reversed now, because we stick to not really compensating people for the cost of living crisis.
1 in 6 is bad pensioners in poverty. It was worse, wasn't it? Before, 10 years ago, it was more like 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 even.
Absolutely, and I think it was under Gordon Brown and perhaps towards the end of the Tony Blair regime, if you like, where there was a big effort made to reverse that trend, which was actually making loads more pensioners fall into the poverty trap, if you like. So that would be pretty bad if that was going to be the case. The thing to remember, of course, is that quite a lot of pensioners get pensions from occupational pension schemes as well.
Firm-based pensions.
Yes. So the state pension, on average, I think is probably something like less than 50% of what they all get. But even if you add it all together, certainly some figures I looked at was just before COVID. That's why I mentioned that, because things have changed quite significantly. We had these ups and downs since. The average income, if you like, of a pensioner was something like £15,000. And we do know that on £15,000, there isn't a huge amount that you can do in terms of, you mentioned buying extra wine and so on. You can just about survive with, the occasional possible holiday, perhaps,
Yeah.
you're willing to take. But it certainly doesn't make you rich by any means. So increasing that amount for pensioners isn't going to make any huge difference for them. And it certainly isn't going to be inflationary. That's the other thing that we have been worrying about. And that's just not, I don't think, going to be the case now. And I come from a country, which is Greece, which during the Euro crisis saw this real reduction in pensions. And the hardship that caused in real terms was huge. And actually it led to even greater hardship across the economy as a result of that. And that was a real problem. So I'm in favour of what's going on.
Chris Brooks of Age UK, it wasn't a given that the government was going to restore the triple lock, was it? I mean, you will talk to many people in government in Whitehall. It's your job. Age UK is a very well-connected charity. Oh, I'm afraid we've lost Chris Brooks of Age UK. That's hopefully we can get him back in a moment. Vicky, what I was going to say to Chris, maybe you can pick up with me, is that it wasn't a given. Oh, Chris is now back. Chris, it's not a given that this triple lock was going to be restored. I certainly talked to ministers and officials who were intimating it may not be, particularly because the government's keen to appeal to younger workers, and there's a sense of kind of, intergenerational strife going on. Oh, the pensioners, the baby boomers, they've got all the houses. Young people can't get on the housing ladder. We can't even afford to have kids. You had a great life. We're much poorer. There is an element of that in our politics at the moment, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, that's always around. I'm not sure it's something that really cuts through with the public, though. I think the polling of the public shows that most people are really supportive of older people and making sure that older people who are living on very low incomes have got sufficient means. I think restoring the triple lock, though, is a big step in the right direction. It wasn't a given. That only the earnings link is enshrined in the law. The rest of it is a political commitment. But obviously, with prices rising so much, and given it with the earnings link was suspended temporarily last year, it would have been very, very harsh to then turn around and say to pensioners, actually, like all the gains that you've made, all the reduction in poverty that you mentioned earlier that's happened over the last 15, 20 years, all of that is going to be taken away with a couple of years' worth of high inflation. It would be very, very difficult to say that to people, I think. So I think it's a very welcome step. And I think there are lots of things that the government can look at doing for other age groups. I think what's really important is that this isn't viewed as something that needs to be achieved by levelling down pensioners. It really should be a lot of focus as well on helping people raise their incomes, levelling up people under state pension age.
Chris Brooks, you are Head of Policy at Age UK. Thanks a lot for joining us here on GB News to discuss that restoration for pensioners from next year of the pensions triple lock. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. In just a moment, we'll be crossing over to London Heathrow Airport, where BA ground staff have recently voted to go on strike later this summer. Will there be an end to this travel chaos? But first, let's have some more GB News headlines with Rhiannon Jones.
It's 1:33, your top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says he will keep going despite suffering double by-election defeats and the resignation of his party chairman, a warning the following footage contains flashing images. In the Devon seat of Tiverton and Honiton, the Liberal Democrats overturned a 24,000 Tory majority, while in West Yorkshire, Labour reclaimed the Redwall seat of Wakefield. The Tory party chair reacted to the results by handing in his resignation, saying somebody needed to take responsibility. Boris Johnson suggested the results are mainly down to the cost of living crisis.
Absolutely true that we've had some tough by-election results, and they've been, I think, a reflection of a lot of things, but we've got to recognise that voters are going through a tough time at the moment, and I think that as a government, I've got to listen to what people are saying, and in particular to the difficulties people are facing over the cost of living, which is, I think, for most people, the number one issue.
The Prime Minister speaking in Rwanda there for the Commonwealth Summit, while Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davies been in Tiverton celebrating his party's by-election victory. He said it's time to show Boris Johnson the door.
Today, the Liberal Democrats have shown that the rule of Boris Johnson and this uncaring Conservative government can be ended. but today is just a start. So join us and let's get rid of them.
Meanwhile, back at the Commonwealth Summit in Kigali, Boris Johnson has met with the Prince of Wales. It's not yet known what was discussed, but it follows comments made in private by Prince Charles, reportedly calling the government's policy of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda appalling. Speaking at the summit's opening ceremony earlier, he told Commonwealth leaders they have the freedom to choose whether or not they become a republic. Child killer James Watson has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 15 years for the murder of 6-year-old Ricky Neve in 1994. The 41-year-old was 13 when he lured the schoolboy to woods near his home in Peterborough and strangled him. Watson was identified by DNA on the victim's clothes following a re-examination of the case 2 decades later. TV Online and DAB+ Radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.227 and 1.166 euros. The price of gold currently stands at £1,488.23 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for real-time investment.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update. Again, today the weather's going to be fairly mixed. Some warm sunshine, but also some heavy downpours, and that mixture of sunshine and showers will continue through the weekend. We are, though, going to see things turning cooler and fresher through the weekend as this cold front moves in. But it's only slowly approaching at the moment. It'll bring some wet weather later to parts of the southwest, Wales and Northern Ireland. Ahead of it, we've still got the relatively warm and humid air, and the Met Office have issued a yellow thunderstorm warning. We're concerned about downpours over parts of northeast England and southeast Scotland. Hit and miss, but some torrential rain is possible. Large hailstones could also be an issue. Elsewhere, well, 1 or 2 showers, but plenty of sunny spells across much of Scotland. Some brighter weather across the east. We'll see temperatures again into the mid-20s, but elsewhere temperatures a little lower than of late and turning fresher as this band of rain moves in through the evening. So most places seeing some rain during the overnight period. That band of rain swinging its way northwards. That is that cold front. And so temperatures won't be as high overnight. It will still be quite warm and humid this evening, so still quite uncomfortable for sleeping. But by morning, temperatures will be that much lower and certainly a fresher feel on Saturday. Still sunny spells for many eastern areas on Saturday. Sunshine for most of the day across northeast Scotland, eastern parts of England. But further west, after a largely sunny start, the showers will get going. The showers will tend to zip through because it's also going to be quite blustery, unseasonably gusty winds around western coast in particular. That'll make it feel even cooler with temperatures in the mid-teens at best in some places. Still quite warm across eastern parts where we'll see the longest spells of sunshine. A few more of those showers drifting north across Scotland during Saturday evening. A bit more wet weather working into Northern Ireland at the same time. A big swirl of low pressure which will continue to throw showers across the country on Sunday, mostly in the west where it'll be windy, generally dry and sunny in the east.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back. You're on the money. It's 1:40. Now, the holiday dreams of thousands of families could be shattered after British Airways staff at Heathrow Airport voted yesterday to go on strike, a move destined surely to cause yet more airport travel chaos. BA staff have reportedly rejected a 10% pay offer, and walkouts could happen as early as next month. Well, our national reporter Paul Hawkins joins us with more from Heathrow Airport. Paul, you're spending a lot of your time at airports these days, and not to go on holiday yourself.
Yeah, although, weirdly, I am flying out from here to the G7 for us tomorrow. But yeah, no holidays at the moment, Liam. Look, this is a significant piece of industrial action by 700 workers for British Airways. Now, they're members of the GMB union, they're members of Unite, and these are the mostly female workforce that the union says are low paid, that are at the check-in desk when you get to the airport, and they patrol the floor, they do your documentation, they put your bags on the trolley and it gets on the conveyor belt, I should say, and it gets sent away. And then they're the other side of security at the boarding gate. So those are the kinds of people that we're talking about. The unions say that effectively they were given a 10% pay cut during the pandemic and that they want that now raised back up. They also want back pay for the length of time that has been reduced, and they want the 10% bonus that the company has offered them. So they're asking for that. They're saying that managers have been given their pay has been put back to pre-pandemic levels. Now so should their pay. British Airways, though, say that, look, we lost £4 billion worth of revenue over the pandemic. This is all that we can afford, and that actually some of their colleagues from ground operations, engineering and cabin crew workers, they have accepted that 10% bonus. So they're saying that not all of their customer-facing staff have voted for industrial action. In fact, they say fewer than 50% of their customer-facing roles based here at Heathrow at Terminals 3 and 5 are actually going to strike, and that if these strikes do go ahead, and we should say if, because the two sides are still negotiating, then they do have plans in place for managers to backfill. When are we talking about? Well, if those strikes go ahead, we're looking at potentially at the earliest July the 8th up to July the 22nd, those weekends for maximum effect. But as we say, talks are ongoing and those dates are still to be announced. The union staff also say that, look, the managers put in place these IT systems that have experienced problems. They've had to deal with the staff shortages and they haven't. We've been at the coalface dealing with irate customers. We've had to put up with physical abuse, with verbal abuse, and we're not getting paid a lot for it. And frankly, why should we carry on doing that? So that's why this industrial action is going ahead.
Interesting, Paul. There are, of course, parallels with the rail strike, aren't there? Because just like the rail industry was hammered during lockdown, trains kept running with empty carriages, the system lost lots of money, and of course the travel industry, particularly airlines, lost huge amounts of money during lockdown. So this isn't just a cost of living crisis, it's also a cost of lockdown crisis that we're seeing now. Blowback, if you like, from lockdown in terms of key industries, particularly key transport industries, being really cash-strapped.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. I mean, I was talking to a travel expert earlier, Bex Dedman, who said that essentially a lot of these companies, especially the airlines, don't have a lot of cash in reserves, and that moving forward, that's going to have to be something that they look at, to have the cash in the bank for when things go wrong, because from the moment you book the flight to when the flight takes off, there's a chain of events there that are based on that flight eventually taking off. Now, if you get to the airport and you find out that the airline don't have enough staff because they haven't been able to recruit to meet the demand and the flight's cancelled, the airline still have to make sure that you get on some sort of flight that day, or they have to give you your money back, and that costs the airlines money. And if they don't have the cash in reserves, then they lose that money, and so they have to look at making cutbacks when it comes to paying staff and the numbers of staff. So there are changes to the way the airline industry is modelled that will have to be made in future. That's what a lot of experts are saying.
Paul Hawkins there at Heathrow, and I look forward to speaking to you next week, Paul, from that G7 meeting which you mentioned in Germany. Time now for my daily interview series, Money Talks. Now, Vicky Price, as many of you all know, is an On the Money regular. Since we began this show last September, she's appeared most weeks giving her expert views on the UK and the global economy, giving her insights into how economic policy is made. Born in Greece, Vicky was educated at the London School of Economics. She's since held academic posts at places like King's London, Oxford, Birmingham City University, among others. And she was formerly joint head of the Government Economics Service, which made her one of the most senior economists in Whitehall. She's also held various private sector roles, working for the accountancy firm KPMG, among others. And she's written several books, including It's the Economy Stupid, Economics for Voters, Greekonomics, Redesigning Manufacturing, and Women versus Capitalism. She's Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economics and Business Research. Vicky is among the UK's leading economists, and here she is, my latest guest on Money Talks. Vicky, great to have you on the show. It seems crazy to say that because you are at least once a week on the show. You are one of the panel of regular On the Money economists that we've assembled, and a fine bunch of people you are, from a whole range of views, a whole range of backgrounds. How did you get into economics?
Oh, what an interesting question. I hadn't thought you were going to ask me that as the first one. Well, frankly, I wasn't really good at anything very much at all. I was doing fine at school, but I wasn't interested in classics. I wasn't particularly good at physics or chemistry because I wasn't interested in that. I was really good at maths. And then, as I was growing up, a bunch of friends that my brother had at the Athens College, I was at the German School of Athens. So I was due to go and study in Germany. I had no idea what. I thought maths would probably be the thing to do. They decided to come to England, and a couple of them between them decided to also do economics. So I thought, wow, that sounds very interesting. So I started doing economics, O-level, actually A-level, because I just took all my languages as GCSEs. I decided to start doing that, even though I was still going to German school. So I remember paying no attention to my lessons any longer and just trying to learn economics. And it really fascinated me. It was just an extraordinary subject because I thought anything goes. If you make an assumption of, if A, then B, then possibly C if something else happens. And I liked that, plus also the maths that was involved in it, which really interested me. So I had to get someone to teach it to me because it wasn't really taught at that age at various schools, and certainly not in my school where I was, and certainly not actually even in the American school where my brother was. So my father found me a teacher who was a professor who had lost his job because at the time we had the colonels.
In Greece, of course,
in Greece,
yeah.
Yes.
We forget Greece was a dictatorship in our lifetimes. Crikey.
Absolutely. So he taught me, and that's how I eventually sort of took my exams to get into the LSE, although I spent a year here refreshing it, if you like. Yeah. But so he taught me for a year, and then, one day we heard on the news that he had been arrested because he was a very well-known professor before, lost his job, because he lost his hand, or bits of his hand, while he was manufacturing a bomb in his house.
Crikey.
And so I basically was having all my lessons above what looks like, or was, a bomb factory. So it was quite an interesting introduction to economics. He was sentenced to death, but fortunately they commuted that, and then he came out, became a very celebrated, academic once again. But it was a pretty interesting introduction to economics.
Now, you had all the academic credentials in the world to be, a university professor, but you've always tried to live your career in the real world, working for companies. You worked at oil companies, you worked in banking, you worked for KPMG, as I said. You've been a policy-oriented economist. Frankly, that's why I wanted you to be on The Money, because you are such a policy-oriented person. So many economists, they're theoretical or they're only financial markets. How do you think economics is doing as a guide to policy? Economists like us, we got really hammered. Why didn't you guys see the 2008 financial crisis coming? We're getting hammered again. Why can't the Bank of England get its arms around inflation and why is inflation 4 times the target? Do you think economics has to pull its socks up a little bit?
I think a little bit, yes. We do get things wrong. But of course, the business of forecasting isn't really what it should be at. It should be at looking what the impact of particular policies might be, both in the short term and long term. And one tends to look at it very much from the short term perspective, and we often miss what it will mean for the long term. And of course, if you're in government and you're going to be spending a certain amount of money, and your government period is limited to a few years, because even less sometimes, and now that we got rid of the Fixed Parliament Act, so you could be gone tomorrow, or you could lose your position in the ministry, overnight, for whatever reason, or you get reshuffled. So we need to interest the ministers and the Treasury to spend a certain amount of money while doing a proper impact assessment and looking at the sort of cost benefit, but making sure that you take into account all the other elements that might be quite beneficial, for example, on the environment or anything else, or on children. So that it is long term.
There can be so much short-termism in economic policy, so much tunnel vision, as you're describing there. But I hope it's not ungallant for me to say that you and I both remember the 1970s. It was a very tumultuous time. That's certainly when I got interested in economics, watching people in my family, businesses collapsing, trying to make ends meet. I'm from an immigrant family too, for Irish immigrant family. I think a lot of people who really follow economics in the UK are from backgrounds similar to ours. Do you think this will be a period like the 70s? I mean, economic policy making got really turbulent. We had 25% inflation. Or do you think, just like sometimes the doom and gloom is overdone, we were discussing earlier in the show, are we starting to overdo the sort of 1970s analogies?
Well, perhaps we are overdoing it a little bit, but things could be even worse than what we're assuming, because we just don't know what's going to happen to the war in Ukraine.
Yeah,
how long it will last, what the impact will be on prices. But I do certainly remember, as you suggest, the oil prices at the time, the 2 oil shocks that we had in the 70s, and how bad it actually was for all of us. I was beginning to work for a bank at the time, so I was finishing the LSE, then went to work for a bank, and we saw the impact there, of course, on interest rates and everything else that was going on. So I worked in the city for 10 years before I went to then, interestingly enough, we talk about the oil sector and prices, went to work for an oil company when, of course, prices were beginning to come down. And for the oil companies, I was doing scenario planning. I was a corporate economist there for Europe, Middle East and Africa. And the catastrophe scenario we were putting together at the time was for the price of oil to go down to below $10 a barrel.
Wow.
When, of course, it had been so high before.
Yeah.
And it did indeed go.
Yeah, for a while.
And then, of course, the interesting thing about what oil companies do, and that's what we need to watch right now as well, because prices are oscillating a little bit. Oscillating, rather, if I pronounce this properly. In Greek, I apologise for that originally. They just closed everything down. There was no investment. And we need to remember that there has been very little investment during the period of COVID, certainly.
By the oil companies. Which could bake in higher prices, right?
Exactly. So it does link very much to what's going on right now. But nevertheless, in real terms, oil prices now are below where they were back in 1980, and they're below where they were just before the financial crisis as well in 2008. So we're not at that level yet. So when we talk about are we being too pessimistic, I mean, truth is that we can probably overall globally afford those prices, but there are some countries that cannot.
Yeah.
And the problem we have right now, which we didn't have then, was the food crisis, which is likely to last for much
And that food crisis is likely to hit the poorer countries a lot worse, not least the countries across the Horn of Africa, the Maghreb, North Africa, that really rely on Russian and Ukrainian grain. Vicky, we could talk forever, but we do have to leave it there for now. But we will see you at some stage next week here on The Money. Thanks for everything you've contributed to the show today. Vicky Price there, our latest Money Talks guest. Lots of you on our top discussions today have been in contact on economic doom and gloom. Timothy says, we can't print or borrow more money. The debt's already a millstone. We need an immediate tax cutting and state shrinking strategy for growth and a long-term strategy to service that debt. The Prime Minister's chasing votes and the Chancellor's economically illiterate. War and inflation are raging, says Timothy. If anything, we're understating how gloomy it looks. And on that pension rise, the restoration of the triple lock, Don got in touch. He wrote, giving pensioners a 10% increase could actually stimulate much-needed spending and growth in the economy to stave off a possible full recession in 2023. Many pensioners are in a position of low outgoings, like big mortgages, and would likely spend on themselves or help out the family with the extra cash. And John got in touch to say old age pensioners have paid into the system all their working lives, and also the pension's low compared to Ireland and other countries, which is true. The young workers can ask for a pay rise. We need to be nice to our old people. Lots of great emails today. Thanks a lot for emailing in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Keep them coming, but that's all we've got time for today. But we're back on Monday at 1 p.m, focusing on the energy crisis. Some say fracking is the answer. Is that really true? We'll be exploring that and other ways to fuel our economy as ever. Grown-up discussions with people who really know their stuff. But for now, thanks for your company today and all week. Have a lovely weekend. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On the Money.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update. Again, today the weather's going to be fairly mixed. Some warm sunshine, but also some heavy downpours, and that mixture of sunshine and showers will continue through the weekend. We are, though, going to see things turning cooler and fresher through the weekend as this cold front moves in. But it's only slowly approaching at the moment. It'll bring some wet weather later to parts of the southwest, Wales and Northern Ireland. Ahead of it, we've still got the relatively warm and humid air, and the Met Office have issued a yellow thunderstorm warning. We're concerned about downpours over parts of northeast England and southeast Scotland. Hit and miss, but some torrential rain is possible. Large hailstones could also be an issue. Elsewhere, well, one or two showers, but plenty of sunny spells across much of Scotland. Some brighter weather across the east. We'll see temperatures again into the mid-20s, but elsewhere temperatures a little lower than of late and turning fresher as this band of rain moves in through the evening. So most places seeing some rain during the overnight period. That band of rain swinging its way northwards. That is that cold front. And so temperatures won't be as high overnight. It will still be quite warm and humid this evening, so still quite uncomfortable for sleeping. But by morning, temperatures will be that much lower and certainly a fresher feel on Saturday. Still sunny spells for many eastern areas on Saturday. Sunshine for most of the day across northeast Scotland, eastern parts of England. But further west, after a largely sunny start, the showers will get going. The showers will tend to zip through because it's also going to be quite blustery, unseasonably gusty winds around western coast in particular. That'll make it feel even cooler with temperatures in the mid-teens at best in some places. Still quite warm across eastern parts where we'll see the longest spells of sunshine. A few more of those showers drifting north across Scotland during Saturday evening. A bit more wet weather working into Northern Ireland at the same time. A big swirl of low pressure which will continue to throw showers across the country on Sunday. Mostly in the west where it'll be windy, generally dry and sunny in the east.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About on GB News with me, Alex Phillips, where we get stuck into the big issues of the day and we look at them in depth. Nothing is off the table and no one will be cancelled for saying what they think. Keeping me company today is Gina Miller, leader of the True and Fair Party, and here's what we've got coming up on the show. It's by-election blues for Boris as red and yellow take over 2 Tory towns. Is it just a mid-term slump, or will it give the government a much-needed kick up the backside? Boris is in Kigali. No, he hasn't deported himself. He's there meeting other Commonwealth leaders, with future leader of the Commonwealth, Prince Charles, there too. It's a big moment for Britain. Can we woo the world when it counts? We're expecting the Prime Minister to give a press conference live from Rwanda in the next hour. And they only investigate a half of all burglaries, so surely it's time there was a top-up at the cop shop. That's apparently about to happen. More police are being promised. We bring you a GB News exclusive on just that. And I'll bring you some forthright thoughts on the other stories doing the rounds today in my agenda. Get in touch with your thoughts too on gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet the programme at GB News. First, though, it's time for the GB News headlines.
Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 2. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says he will keep going despite suffering double by-election defeats and the resignation of his party chairman. A warning, the following footage contains flashing images. In the Devon seat of Tiverton and Honiton, the Liberal Democrats overturned a 24,000 Tory majority, while in West Yorkshire, Labour reclaimed the Redwall seat of Wakefield. The Tory party chair reacted to the results by handing in his resignation, saying somebody needed to take responsibility. Boris Johnson suggested the results are mainly down to the cost of living crisis.
Absolutely true that we've had some tough by-election results, and they've been, I think, a reflection of a lot of things, but we've got to recognise that voters are going through a tough time at the moment, and